Well, here we are. Welcome, everybody, to our fourth episode of our All Good Things podcast. So here we are gathered once again, and this time round we're going to talk about things that have been encouraging, about encouragements. But before we do that, let's just start as we usually do. What have we all been up to? Adam, start with you.
We will both have enjoyed an album club meeting recently. It was my first time hearing a bit of prefab sprout.
Yes.
Which was a good sound. We've moved into the 80s.
Yes.
Which in my book is a big positive. So I really enjoyed that. And I do still refer to it with friends as the old man club, and then have to qualify with what we do. But I think that's
how dare you?
Description.
Yes, no, you're right. We did indeed. Bill Bailey dragged us kicking and screaming into the 80s.
That's fantastic.
Being in the 70s for the first two or three, and I'd not come across a prefab sprout before, really. It was indeed a good album.
What kind of music is prefab sprout?
It was a mix. It was kind of a bit of jazz, quite mellow, very smooth production, wasn't it?
There was one of the things I like about album clubs. There's a lot of blokes in the room who suddenly come out with a wealth of basically. It's like being back at uni doing music, and everyone goes, "Oh, there's some influences here." And,
It's just like wine tasting, where it's got notes of this.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's a good analogy.
A little bit more grounded in reality.
Probably not that much. It depends how much wine has been tasted. That is another feature of the album.
There it is. They're from roughly the same kind of region and time as Dire Straits. So not a million miles from that sound, but a bit more kind of like 80s. I thought of Kirsty and her love of Aha.
Okay.
But maybe that's...
Album club, good fun. Newcomers always welcome. We're meeting for another one very soon. So watch this space. Look out for that.
Well, speaking of newcomers, actually, it's been really nice actually seeing quite good numbers of new people coming around at church recently. We've had the joys of getting to meet up with some of our new friends now. They came from November, so I think is when they arrived. Now we've been meeting almost weekly for some sort of big event of some sort, whether it's been like a meal or did mini painting on one evening. We've got a murder mystery this Friday.
We're going to have to explain mini painting, because when we were invited to that, I imagined that we'd all do very small paintings on paper, and then I realised that it wasn't that. So what's mini painting?
So it's a mini figurine painting, which again also not something, despite my love of D&D, not something I've done before. And it was really, really fun. Nick and Alicia has like a 3D printer and a ton of miniature speed paints. Right. And we had a good number of us all came round table and we just painted a little mini for a bit, and I think we finished off with some Beat Saber on virtual reality as well. It was it was quite an evening.
We can ask him later what that means.
That's slightly disappointed when you said mini painting. I thought you were going to be graffitiing an automobile.
Well, my styles of car decals are not quite as up to snuff as my lack of ability with miniatures.
Good stuff. And talking of new things, you're of course a big board game aficionado, James.
Oh yeah.
New games. Did you get any new games for Christmas? Or?
Oh, of course I got new games for Christmas. I got like 4 of them. We recently opened up Masquerade, which is fantastic. It's sort of socially deduction as far as I'm aware. So it's lots of like masks around the table, and the idea is you want to bluff and claim that you're one of the masks, but nobody really knows what's on the table, which is quite a lot of fun. Other than that, we played like Archduke, and then we had at the board game evening, I can't remember what they brought, was it Citadels?
We did play Citadels. That was really good fun. Yeah, it's one of my favourite games. We learnt that in my family on holiday once, so we had it at home, but it was all in German or Dutch. So all the characters I know is like the Dieb and the König and things like that. It got me not very far in languages, but never mind. Okay.
Well, that's all good stuff. Well, as ever, march of time ticks on. So we probably ought to move on to the main topic of this episode. So we'll do our usual shuffling around of chairs and positioning of speakers, and we'll get cracking.
Okay, we've all swapped places because there's a system to this, and it might not look like it or feel like it, but we think there's a system, so we have to move around. And stops our legs from going to sleep. Anyway, we want to talk about encouragements.
Yes.
One of the reasons that we thought we'd do a podcast, apart from that it's fun and we have to fill our week, obviously, that's not the real reason, is that hopefully we get to share some real encouragement with you. So if there are people out there listening, and it sounds like there are.
I think we have at least one other listener, I believe.
Yeah. What we really want is for you to listen a bit, be encouraged, maybe think, oh, I'll go and read that, or I'll try that out. And ideally, that you'll hear us witter and come and have a witter at us. So you might hear that James loves Warhammer and think, I've always wanted to talk to someone about Warhammer, and you go and talk to the vicar. So that one of the aims is that you would not be scared of talking to the vicar or people who stand at the front. James is considering that.
I'm just, the idea that anyone would be scared to talk to me is a slightly strange one to me, but there you go.
Well, so it should be. But hey, people sometimes are nervous about all sorts. So vicars are one of those weird jobs that people have all sorts of ideas. Come and listen to us have a weird chat, and then come and have your own little funny chat with us. We'll have a great time. But let me ask, James, what's been encouraging you lately?
I think there's one or two things have been really encouraging, Adam. I think firstly I would mention we talked in a previous episode of the podcast about one-to-one Bible study, and why that's a really good and valuable thing to do. And I was talking further about one-to-ones at church, and we had somebody interviewed, and the response to that has been fantastically encouraging. People have been picking up copies of the sample one-to-one study books that we added to the church library, the word one-to-one. And I saw a number of folk walking out with copies of that after we did the presentation at church. So that's been a really encouragement. People are engaging with that and looking into that, and that's exactly what we hoped for. And so
that's great, because often we'll see something at the front of church. Like I really enjoyed your little interview with Bill and Emma's with Kay were fantastic to hear.
Yeah, that was good.
But we all see that, and then we don't necessarily see what happens after that. So it's really nice that people are getting stuff in. That's brilliant.
And then the other thing, we talked a little bit about it in our preamble, didn't we? This idea of making connections through using the things that we're really passionate about and interested in, and I think for me it's music, and so Martin and I got the album club going as we've already talked about, and that's going really, really well. Getting people together and everything, and then James Monroe with his love of board games started up the area woo from the off camera, and that's getting going now. Hopefully monthly. And I mean the idea of board games I can cope to once a year, maybe at Christmas.
I think we had a regular Yahtzee at your house.
I think it's the dice issue. I think you've had too much dice in your life.
Maybe
less dice.
But the listeners should know that when James mentioned Masquerade earlier, James was shaking his head in the corner.
No, do not approve. No, too many dice, too much randomness.
But I understand, whilst that's not quite my cup of tea, that's going well as well. So I'm really encouraged by the idea that we can use what we're interested in.
It's good.
And just having fun can be a church thing and a God thing, which is great. Yeah, exactly.
And of course, so board games aren't my thing. Music's James M's not quite his thing. But what else can we do? And that's the other thing that I'm encouraged by. I know we've got all sorts of different folk with different interests, whether it's sport or gardening or whatever it might be. So what else can we do by way of making connections?
No, it's good.
So something to think about if anybody's watching this.
Brilliant.
What else?
Brilliant.
What next? So that's my encouragement, Adam, at the minute. In particular, encouragement for me.
Fantastic. Let's turn to another James then.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been on a conference recently. Conference called the Fellowship of Word and Spirit Conference. I've been on it every year since the late 20th century, which is a slightly alarming thought. But that's always an encouraging conference because you get to meet up with some old friends, and it's always good to catch up with folk share their encouragement and look, share the challenges as well.
Yeah.
But that was a particularly encouraging conference. I've been involved in organising it for a while, and we had a few more people this time, and we had everything went well. When you organise a conference and you kind of book 3 speakers and you book somebody else, and you're like, there's always like an element of jeopardy about how is this actually going to come together. We did have one conference a few years ago where one of the speakers essentially stole somebody else's thunder entirely accidentally. It was a little bit of a car crash. But this year went really well, and it's just an encouraging thing to come back from, to hear from God's word. We're looking at 1 Peter together, to be encouraged by that, to think a little bit about living in our world today. We were talking about interpretive location.
Interpretive location.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about interpretive location.
It's a property show that I've not seen yet.
So that's kind of quite. No, it's not quite the same as anything involving Kirsty Elstrop, but that might be a future podcast on interpretive location. But that was good. Ethical stuff, the way the world is, why it's the way it is, all those kind of things that we often try and tease out a little bit here, Sunday by Sunday, and certainly we get to tease them out on the Bible overview and some of the other courses. So that's been really encouraging. I mean, I've been finding church very encouraging. Locally, certainly, but both churches have been encouraging. Lots of encouragements before. With Christmas services are always good to see people, and January's been good. Folk joining us, folk getting more involved.
Yeah.
We've said before, the trouble is now we're in episode 4. I've got no chance of remembering what I've said previously. My apologies. If anyone's doing a binge listen to these over a weekend, I could get a bit repetitive, but never mind.
We'll put a little health warning.
Yeah.
You shouldn't listen to us for more than
don't listen for more than 2 or 3 episodes at a time.
Every listener's thinking, no, I know that.
Yeah. So we've quite a lot of people joined small groups with churches, haven't they? And that's been really encouraging, because it's quite a big commitment. But seeing those groups, we've even got one small group which is in the process of looking at whether to sort of split in 2, because it's got big, and new members wanting to join. So those are really encouraging things. Small groups, growth groups, house groups, they're all the same thing. I just use the terms interchangeably. So that's been really encouraging. And actually, look, it's always the same, isn't it? You are always in the midst of encouragements and discouragements. So I think that's important, isn't it? That when you talk about encouragements, that you don't think, right, I've either had an encouraging week or I've had a discouraging week.
Yeah, sure.
I generally think I've had both.
Yeah.
Because with any given week, you can look back and there's been some stuff, whether it's personal, whether it's church stuff, whether it's other stuff, where you're like, oh, that's just, that's not nice. That's been hard. But at the same time, there'll be other things where you think, yeah, but that's happened and that's been good.
Try and stay in the balance of it.
I think so, yeah. I think rather than always feel, I can only talk about encouragements when I'm really feeling it. It's like, no, they're always there. So yeah, lots of things. Lots of encouragements to look back and give thanks for.
Well, that is a lot, especially because we thought of this episode in January, and it's not quite January at the moment, and you're probably not listening in January, but we thought if there's ever a month that you need it'll be about now. It's going well so far.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right, James. That is just life, isn't it? It's a mixture of encouragements and things that are less interesting. I mean, you had some really dodgy bloke playing the bass at the FWS conference.
Yeah,
there was a mix of encouragement and discouragement there, I'm sure.
Yeah. Good pianist, though. So
So that redeemed everything. Yeah.
We learned a new song,
James.
We learned a new song as well.
Which
all Our Tomorrows, which
Oh, I quite like that.
That.
No, that went down really well.
In fact,
didn't it?
by the time you listen to this, and through the mysteries of modern technology, you might have already sung it. I don't know.
We might even have sung it in church.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, it's always nice to hear someone's, heard a new song and thought, actually, that's going to be useful for people. That's really nice to hear.
Just capturing that reality that we're always there. We're always in the midst of everything, aren't we?
Yeah.
There's a perspective thing going on, is there?
Yeah, a bit of perspective is always good.
Raising our eyes, good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm laughing
yourself?
because we've got a little board of things we want to mention, and James's just says Jeopardy, but we've clearly covered all the Jeopardy you wanted to talk about. Yeah, I've been quite encouraged too recently, which is always nice. Yeah, a mix, like you're saying, of all sorts. There's plenty that's going on that's a bit of a slog to get through. People might know that I've started a law conversion course recently.
But other than that, there are some encouraging things.
Well, I've got a lot of reading. I mean, lots of it is good fun, but also it's a lot. There's a lot to read through. We had a home buying survey come back 2 days after I've been reading a couple of chapters about asbestos related lawsuits. So that
you are living the dream, aren't you?
aren't I just? Yeah, but there's also lots of encouragements going on. So that course began the same week that James Monroe and I were off at a conference that we go to every January called Growing Young Disciples, and that is a huge boost. There's a few youth workers that we know, and you get into January and you've had a bit of a sprint through Christmas and the weather's all gone cold and everything slumps a little bit. And there's this kind of beacon of hope in January that is Growing Young Disciples, so we're really grateful for that. That's about nearly 400 youth workers from around the UK, a lot of people from Ireland, which adds to some nice voices. And then there's always a small handful from like somewhere you don't expect, like Latvia or South Africa, which is really cool. Then you have someone FWS from just the way you said, I thought you might have a...
Oh, no, but it's just nice to always... surprises are always good like that, isn't it? It's encouraging to see.
It was lovely. Really, really nice to hear nearly 400 people together singing. And I want to say especially one of the most encouraging things occasionally is when someone stands next to you and they're singing and they're not great at that. Because it's nice when someone stands next to you and is singing and you go, oh, fair enough, if I could sing like you, I'd sing loud. It's almost nicer when they're sort of terrible and you think, you're just thrilled, aren't you? You've heard some preaching, you know what God is like, and you're going to sing. I love that. So if you're at church and you always kind of don't sing because you don't feel it, I get it, but be encouraged.
Brilliant. There we are.
I want to hear some more terrible voices.
A good set of encouragement.
Yeah, and you, I believe, just briefly, Adam, you bumped into an old mucker of ours, John T. Rhodes, formerly of this parish.
Yeah,
he was one of the speakers, I believe.
We had a few great preachers that was really encouragement. John T. was teaching us about Jesus as prophet, priest, and king. Which is a great one of the kind of fashionable at the moment patterns through the Bible of how do we go through seeing Jesus on every page, which is awesome, and these 3 anointed offices, and that was a massive encouragement. He was also leading something kind of straight afterwards that was a bit more baffling, but a huge encouragement, which was about kind of what it means for Jesus to be the God who takes on suffering, and he talked a lot about Jesus having these 2 nations. It's an incarnation thing. How do we understand God making himself man and picking up some different areas? Go to the cross, go to all sorts of different parts of the gospel and say, what is going on? How can God die? What happens when Jesus says, why have you forsaken me? How might we kind of read that in a bit of a weird direction? How are we supposed to get our heads around what is an amazing mystery? And one of the real thrills of that was how kind of pastoral and applied and relevant that was. There was some, let's sit down and break your head for a minute with some theology, but it was never dry and dusty. There's a real encouragement here in the longer you spend being a little bit baffled with what God is like, the more you think, that's fantastic. God knew exactly what he was doing. He went to huge lengths for me and you. That was awesome to hear.
That sounds really encouraging, as you say.
It was lovely. I also got to come home and write a reference for one of our students who's at John T's church for an internship. So that was quite nice. So loads of encouragement. It's been really, really great.
Excellent.
Lovely. We're, I think, going to shuffle our seats.
Yeah,
because it's what
'cause
we
we love
like
it.
to do.
Yeah.
We've got to keep warm in here somehow.
We get a turn next to the fire.
Yeah,
so that's another little encouragement.
That's the only reason we move around, really. Pretend it's fun.
Feet are getting cold.
Well, let's do it.
From the cat.
Well, as you can see, I've finally taken possession of the white chair, which is obviously the position of power in the room. So quite how it's taken this long to get it, I don't know. But we are coming to the end of the podcast, so I've got the position of power for about 2 minutes, in which time I need to tell you a number of things. The first is, we really would appreciate your questions.
Yeah.
Okay, if only that, so they prove to us that someone is actually listening to or watching the podcast. And actually, your encouragements, do share them with us.
Yeah.
We can share those, and if you wish, we can share those anonymously. If you
Yeah.
don't want your name to be used, which is obviously what anonymous means.
How can people do that?
How can people do that? They can email the office, the church office,
Groovy.
at the moment, and put podcast somewhere in the subject line.
Nice.
Obviously, our ambition will be to have a direct podcast email, but that might take us a little while. Other things to say, just as we finish, we don't forget to catch us not just at 10 o'clock at St Altman's, but also at 7 o'clock for our evening services. You know that they're not on absolutely every week, but they tend to be most of the time, certainly term time. Have a look on the website and on the programme for that. As we are, we'll by the time you're listening to this, I think we'll be in Luke.
Cool.
So we're looking at Luke, so that's very encouraging. I mean, if you're listening to it next year, tough. But if you're listening to it roughly about the time we put it out, we'll be in Luke. And then the only thing I need to say finally is do dial in for our next episode. When, and let's be clear, we've got to episode 5 before I've insisted on this. We'll be thinking about books.
Woohoo!
And we're all going to be sharing something about a book that's encouraged us, or that we think other people should read, or something about that book. And that's what we'll be doing next time. So if you want some book recommendations, then join us next time.
Brilliant. We might even get a I'm looking for a book on this.
Oh yeah, okay. So is that your excuse for not reading?
No, I've got a few lined up already, but I really want questions.
Okay, fair enough. All right. So there we are.
All
See you
good
next
things
time.
come
All
to
good
an
things
end.
must come to an end.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yeah.